wote wamelala chini. Utapata wasee wengi wamekufa. Ona cameraman ameanza kukimbia. Ona amekimbia. Ona ameficha kamera. Watu wote sijui wameenda serikalini. Niambie ukweli, watu watakufa huku leo tano. Msikia, zima hiyo simu. Naona hataki kamera. Siona hiyo ishatolewa. Simuona zilikuwa mbili. Kulikuwa na hii ilikuwa pale na hiyo ya hawa sasa. Hiyo ishatolewa. Vita huko kazi. Kuna yule jamaa ataonga sana. Sasa hiyo kamera imerudi. Mama. Ndio ataambiwa azime kamera.
And there you have the live pictures coming to you from the Moi International KASARANI Sports Center, where we had witnessed the arrival of the body of the former Prime Minister that was taken off the military gun carriage and into the stadium. Thereafter, the scenes that we had witnessed of gunfire, shots into the air to disperse the surging crowd into the area that was meant to be the sitting positions for the dignitaries, including the president, who we hadn't confirmed his presence, but we had seen the presence of other ODM leadership. But to get what's happening there, let's get in touch with my colleague Jimmy Mbogo by way of link. And Jimmy, what can you tell us? We have heard sounds of gunshots. What exactly is happening?
It's quite a scary experience where we are currently standing in somewhere we've had to take cover. So there was a bit of an altercation between the leaders and the crowd that had gathered there. There was a bit of pouring of water on that is on some of the leaders there, and we saw some of the agitated crowd throwing the twigs that they had with them into that is the presidential dais. I believe that should be in the middle. Now,
ona yule amefukuzwa pale.
Triggered the response from the police officers and the security personnel that were manning that pavilion, both the presidential escort and of course the wrecking team that is currently here at KASARANI Stadium. So that then resulted to the lobbing of tear gas just to that crowd that was there, and it didn't matter whether you're media or part of the crowd that was just the head gathered here as mourners. Everyone has been dispersed. So we're still taking cover somewhere within the building, but we will try to go back in and see whether that has been addressed. But majority of the people that had gathered here at KASARANI Stadium, there was a bit of a stampede, and most of them actually ran towards the exit. So if you look at the exit places, and especially next to Gate 4 and Gate 3, that is where majority of the people are currently standing. When you look on behind the presidential pavilion, there's still a number of vehicles here belonging to some of these leaders that were inside. We're trying to just say, and what we saw is some of these audience leaders had tried to reach out and speak to try and just calm down the whole getting agitated. Happened here from right around the time that here, which is around 12 p.m. Now, you will remember that the viewing was supposed to happen at Parliament, but because of the crowd there and the very poor crowd control that we saw there, that same crowd had to move back to this side once they got the news that the viewing was supposed to happen right here at the KASARANI Stadium. Now, but as soon as we got here, that is around a few minutes after midday, that is when we found the police and the security operators here at the KASARANI Stadium just trying to come up with a strategy and planning themselves. However, a few minutes after we got here, there was only, if you remember from the link that I had done earlier on, we just got into the stadium, the crowd was still very manageable, so there was an opportunity to try and control this crowd better. However, that opportunity was missed because as the security operators are still getting their acts together, the crowd kept on, and so they ended up getting into the stadium through all the entrance that they could find and slowly onto the field. Now, ideally, what the plan was for them to get into the stadium, that is between gate 9 and gate 10, and walk around the stadium, view the body right down, right on the field level. That is where the viewing was supposed to happen, straight on across from the presidential pavilion, and they were supposed to walk straight into gate 4 and exit through that gate. However, before even the barrier could be set up, the crowd kept on increasing, and so it became a nightmare. It became very evident that the security operators were not ready to receive this crowd that was building. But then, so the crowd went on, and we saw a number of leaders that from the ODM party that were already here. We tried to speak to them just to try and get them to calm down, to try and get them to be patient. However, there has been no communication from the leaders that are currently here. We have tried to, we're hoping that at least there would be a safe over direction to be given. And right above me, I can see former Chief Justice, that is David Waraga, who is also taken cover in the VIP area. And so that just goes to show you that no one was spared in this chaos that we have witnessed a few minutes ago. So there was a bit of tear gas that has been lobbed, and what is believed to be either live or rubber bullets that was trying to make sure crowd that was really buzzing and asking to know what is the way forward. We will try also to, if we can, able to speak to some of the youth. However, that will have to wait until later on so that we can understand why what triggered that. But from where we were shooting from, and from where we were standing together with our to alert you is that our entire team is okay. That is my camera person, my camera colleague, and also our colleagues from Inoro and Ramogi. We are all safe, so no one needs to worry about us. We're okay. We're just taking cover. So based on that, we will try to. We haven't seen any of the leaders leave yet. Right where I'm standing, what I can be able to see is that all the leaders are still here, based on the number of their vehicles, and all their assistants are still here. You can see a number of them just speaking to each other. It is, however, what we do not know is what is the way forward. Is there are Kenyans going to be allowed then to go ahead and view this body and pay their last respect, or not? Because from all indications here is that this is likely to happen. However, there has been no communication. Now, I will take you back. The public address vehicle, the president. Side of the field, but as soon as it's getting bigger, we saw some of these vehicles being attacked. Initially, playing a bit of it, just
that is Jimmy Mbogo, and we do apologize towards the end of the lacking clarity in his communication due to the breakdown that we had experienced, and he was giving us an assessment of what's happening at the Moi International Sports Center, KASARANI, where members of the security service are trying to contain the surging sea of humanity that was there to receive the body of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga that was taken off the military gun carriage. And the public viewing that was supposed to happen seems to be here, underpinned by the headache posed by the logistical nightmare which had prompted the move from the National Assembly in Parliament to the Moi International Sports Center. And we had seen a while ago, as Jimmy had reported, sounds of the gunfire, but he had authoritatively confirmed that those were of rubber bullets that were fired to disperse the crowds, and as well as the tear gas that was lobbed to disperse the crowds that were building up towards the presidential dais that was meant to accommodate the president and other dignitaries for the public viewing that was to take place. And this is in relation to the fitting send-off that was accorded the former as the Prime Minister with President Mwai Kibaki after the 2007 post-election violence. A man of convictions made for the seasons, as yesterday described by many, and the fitting salute that will be accorded the former Prime Minister, and a man who as well had broken the thickness of unimaginable glass ceiling in Kenya's political arena. So as we make sense of what's happening in Kasarani, let's come back to studio, and I'm joined by Alex Matere and the Kidi Mwa. Gentlemen, much appreciated. Of course, young, but both of you have benefited from the association that you had with the former Prime Minister. Alex, to begin with you, such a big day, and it appears that even in death, the former Prime Minister, as he was when he was alive, commands so much respect among millions with considerable ease.
Thank you so much, Ayub. First, allow me to start by sending my heartfelt condolences to our mother, Mama Aida, the children, our contemporaries, Winnie, Junior, and Rosemary, for not just having lost a leader, but a father. Secondly, also to all his supporters across. Baba, in several occasions, he was heard saying that he has 10 million strong. His rallying call has always been 10 million strong. And whoever doubted that, today I think by what we have been able to see from JKIA to Kasarani has basically proven that Baba was really, really loved. The way Wamalwa Kijana aptly captured it back when they were fighting for multi-party democracy, that there are only two sides of Raila and his supporters. You are either a Raila mania or a Raila phobia. So you've seen the mania side of Raila play out today. What I'd want to encourage the supporters who are across the country is to ask themselves one pertinent question. How would Baba have wanted his farewell to be? Would he have wanted it to have this kind of commotion that we are witnessing in Kasarani? Or he would have wanted it to be quite orderly, the way he was and the way he taught us all through the years that we shared with him? He would have wanted all the protocols to be followed. He would have wanted people to mourn him, but in order. So I'd want to encourage and urge all the supporters across the country to exercise decorum, to exercise restraint despite the kind of pain, the kind of sadness that they have in their hearts, so that we can be able to give Baba a befitting send-off.
Yeah. And Kidi, an extraordinary leader, an extraordinary man.
An extraordinary leader, an extraordinary man. Wonderful phrases for Raila Odinga. I mean, we are in this moment of grief of continental proportion. I think it is incumbent upon us as the people of Kenya, again, as my brother Matere rightly puts it, to agonize profoundly on how Baba would have wanted us to remember him. I think one of the greatest legacy of Raila Odinga was that he understood profoundly what a fragile state Kenya was. And I think that at every critical juncture, when us as his supporters would feel that maybe he had been robbed of victory, Baba would have the presence of mind to put aside his ambition and give the people who then had been given the instruments of power to lead. And he would then lend them his own legitimacy of the people who loved him. I think to that extent, as the people of Kenya, we must remember that Baba wanted us to live in a peaceful country, and to that extent, May we remember that and remain peaceful in all the processes that have been, as they have been communicated to us by the Federal Committee.
Yeah, and the changes, Alex, coming in because Parliament apparently wouldn't have been the ideal location. I mean, despite what was granted as the state funeral and all the accompanying rights that will be detailing and the differences therein. Because of the persona of the former Prime Minister, and appears that it still is prompting logistical challenges and nightmare as we had witnessed at the KASARANI Stadium.
Yeah.
It seems that we are in for a long haul before his burial on Sunday.
Yeah. I think it was expected for us who have been learning at Raila's feet. We knew that despite the wishes that he had made very clear through the committee, that he would have wanted to be mourned and buried within 3 days. We also have, on the flip side, the wishes of his supporters, of his mentees, of the people that he has groomed and mentored across the journey. And therefore, I think this is part of the challenge that we currently have. Early in the day, I was actually at JKIA.
Yeah, in the morning.
In the morning, when the military had actually also mounted military guard in honor, in readiness for receiving the body together with the president in honor of Raila Odinga. But that wasn't possible because the crowd kept on surging to the point that it had to move all the way to the runway. And later after that, we came all the way up to Parliament. And coming to Parliament again, we had left one big crowd at JKIA, another one we came with it all the way to town. In Parliament, there was also a crowd that was waiting for him.
And also at the Lee Funeral Home.
At the Lee Funeral Home, there was also another crowd waiting for him. So this is basically the enigma, the way it has been captured by Babafemi Badejo in his book. This is the enigma of Kenyan politics. I'm so sure there are thousands of supporters who have traveled from across all corners of the country to be able to be here to pay tribute and also to view the body and pay their last respect to Raila Odinga. So it's going to be a logistical nightmare. First from Kasarani, then where the body is going to be taken tonight, the state funeral that we expect tomorrow. But that said and done, also there are protocols that come with the preparation of a state funeral. We have to remember very well that Raila himself was actually an avid debater representing Langata constituency, probably the only person in the history of our democracy who, after he crossed party lines, he actually went through a by-election that was caused by that. I don't think we have any other person who has been able to do that. So Raila stands tall, first as a parliamentarian and secondly as a leader. And because of that, I think, and as per the protocols of state funerals, it was procedural that he needed to have gone to Parliament the way it has always been done by former heads and departed former heads of states and heads of government. If a prime minister passes on, then they have to lay in state in Parliament. So it's a ritual or it's a tradition that has already been set. The thing that keeps on bothering me is whether we can be able to manage this logistical nightmare to fully carry out the state funeral the way the protocols require, or we might have to skive one or two other processes.
Yeah, and Kidi, when he was presented with the question of losing the presidency, the prospects of losing support regarding the Mau Forest question, he said, I am not a consensus politician, but a conviction politician. And this mark certainly is it, as a student of political history, Kidi, the beginning of a new era for Kenya after Sunday. How will it look like in the shadows of the former Prime Minister?
I think the best part about Raila's legacy is that he allowed so many young and upcoming politicians to access him. For instance, on this panel alone, we had the good fortune of working very intimately with him during last election. We were actually among a select few young people who did the last mile of his youth presidential campaign. One thing Raila taught us is that you cannot get into leadership, particularly political leadership, and sustain a long-term following if you are not authentic. That authenticity of Raila Odinga, you see it from the days they begin LDP, when he is championing for socio-economic rights. to the time when, as a prime minister and co-president and helping back the new constitution, they made sure that Article 43 was about socio-economic rights, that they realized that leaving them as political rhetoric is not enough, because you are not sure who is going to get to the helm of power tomorrow. So that irrespective of whoever is president, whoever holds the instruments of power, they must remember that socio-economic rights are part of the social bargain that the people have made with the state. So you see Raila, the conviction politician, and I think if you look at Kenya's history in the 21st century, he remains the most consequential retail politician. One politician who had the capacity to connect with people from diverse backgrounds. The rest of us knew how much Raila would keep in touch, would call the most, least person you'd think of, someone you'd meet and walk past, Raila had his number.
Yeah, and Alex, is he a man who had sculptured himself to be the socialist he was and the social democrat? And thus, is it the explanation as to why we are seeing the multitude of humanity following him from the JKIA to Parliament to Lee Funeral Home, and now in less than an hour they have filled 60,000-seater stadium in Kasarani?
Ayub, the way my colleague has aptly captured it, Raila was a social democrat. We actually used to refer to him as the North Pole of democracy, not just in Kenya but across Africa. And easily the best of Africa's second generation of leaders. After the exit of Kwame Nkrumah, Leopold Senghor, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Ben Bella, and the likes, they handed over the mantle to the second generation of African leaders. And Raila happened to have read and learned the art of politics and the art of leadership and governance from the first generation of African leaders. The kind of vision that they had for Africa, the unity for Africa, the prosperity for Africa, the stability, the economic progress of Africa. This was transited later on to Raila, and he gave us a very good glimpse during the time he was he had given a bid to the AUC, the African Union Commission. I think it was quite clear the kind of politician that he was. To us who have gone through his hands, one of the things that probably is less said is that Raila wasn't made in a day. Raila was a product of a very rigorous and vigorous democratic process. That one of mentorship and that one of learning. Back after he came from detention and he went away in Norway, in one of the occasions that I sat with him, he used to tell me that the time that he was in Norway, 90% of his time, he actually took it to learn, to study African culture, to study African history, to study African economy. And that's why Raila was well versed with the entire continental economy. He wouldn't challenge him in a question. For instance, if you throw a random question about Mozambique, Raila would have an answer in his fingertips. If you challenge him a question about Egypt, Raila would have an answer in his fingertips. So through the kind of mentorship that he himself was a product of, he managed to amass a lot of skills, including mobilization skills. And back in 1994, and also the claimor for multi-party democracy in 1992, the repealing of Section 2A, if it were not for the kind of mobilization skills that the likes of Raila had, then that would have been very, very difficult. As I probably finish on that part, the other part that I remember fondly, there is a time when I hosted the former Nigerian president, Olusegun Obasanjo, in Kenya. And when I was bidding him farewell at 3 a.m. at the VIP lounge that today we have gone there, very nostalgic for me to receive the body of my leader. I remember His Excellency asking me to reach out to the Honorable Raila. This was basically about a month or 1.5 months to the vote at AU. And I tried reaching him. Of course, definitely the phone was off. I called several aides and we were able to locate him. 2-3 minutes later, Raila called me and he was like, Alex, what is it that is so urgent that could not wait until sunrise? But I tell him, Your Excellency, is not me. I actually have your contemporary here who would want to speak to you. And from that, definitely handed over the phone back to Obasanjo, and they had a conversation of about 15 to 20 minutes that is still very imprinted in my mind. And after I was given back the phone, Raila told me that don't let the general go. The first question you have to ask him is about the African Leadership Forum. Then the second question you have to ask him to tell you the experience that we had with Lin Kuan Yew. Lin Kuan Yew still remains a household name in the transformation of economies of Africa. Probably the only other person that was able to sit with Lin Kuan Yew, apart from Raila, is Nyong'o. This information we get it from our interaction with Olusegun Obasanjo. So you can see the kind of mentorship that Raila also had gone through for him to have a very clear perspective of where our economy needed to go, of how to handle our issues, is because he had interacted, he had learned, he had studied, and he had also gotten the experience of sitting with the kind of transformation that Lin Kuan Yew had actually brought across in Singapore and Malaysia and all those other Asian tigers.
Yeah, and Kidi, before I come to you, this is a message from Franklin Mukwanja, the Executive Director at the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, an organization that Odinga had was so fond of and had supported its cause. He says, this is my view about the former Prime Minister. He is the only Raila Odinga now lying still and lifeless, yet the only one whose word could once hush the tempest he stirred, and the lone voice that could summon his legion to come and obedience. What a true catch 22. For what can decree how Raila should be mourned? He asks the question. To mourn him, he says, the Raila way is to roar the streets alive, yet to honor him as a statesman is to heed the call for order. Even in death, he tests the balance between passion and peace. May he rest in eternal peace. That is Franklin Mukwanja, the Executive Director, the Center for Multi-Party Democracy.
Well, very good man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, certainly, we're also talking about Kidi. Is it, as you can see, the live pictures from his Bondo home, where he will be laid to rest on Sunday. My colleague Sam Gituko and team have been here since yesterday when the former Prime Minister has passed. And at the Moi International Sports Center in Kasarani, where the members of the security agencies are keeping guard, given the logistical challenges that has faced the public viewing of the body of the former Prime Minister. And this is the out view of the stadium where my colleague Ben Kirui can now see you. As you can see, he's panning the live pictures there, and you can see the long line of the vehicles that had ferried the dignitaries there for the public viewing, which now, as you can see, looks frozen, given the situation that we had witnessed there after the crowds were dispersed who have been there, the multitude, the sea of humanity who have come there to view the body of the former Prime Minister. All these are live on your screens, and for a man who has commanded so much support with considerable ease, given how he had engineered himself to be the social democrat he was, also forming a party that had coalesced around the cause. A man who can be described in long list of vocabularies, and who has left an impact in the political arena, given the, of course, footprints that he leaves within the political establishment. And you can see the fun that accompanies the supporters of Odinga, who are putting the football pitch to maximum use, and the goalposts that are still there following the matches of the Africa Continental Championships, CHAN, that were hosted by Kenya. And it's also a fun moment for them, you can see there. And for Raila Odinga, who was passionate about football and who supported locally Gor Mahia or Kogalo, and supported Arsenal, the Gunners in the English Premier League. A man of many seasons, as you can see, as the security agencies, with persuasive tone, as you can see, not in the other circumstance when this was protest along the streets, but trying to calm down those who are still finding it difficult to come to terms to appreciate the death of the former Prime Minister. So this is the continuing coverage of the live pictures that are coming to you from Bondo in Siaya County and in Nairobi at the Moi International Sports Center. And this is Mama Mary's graveyard, where alongside the other family members of the Odingas, where he will be laid to rest on Sunday. Of course, behind time, given that the communication yesterday issued by the Deputy President, this was supposed to have started by 12 p.m. but was moved from Parliament given the challenges it presented, and still the same appears to be the situation at the KASARANI Stadium. Yes, Kitty.
These moments such as this can be very confusing, because I don't think any one of us on this panel ever imagined that we could speak about Raila Odinga in past tense so soon. I guess it has taken a lot of us almost 24 hours or so to actually internalize that Raila Odinga is no more. Because some of us have spoken very strongly, and I've spoken truth to power very strongly, in a manner that has caught so many people with surprise. And many people have asked, where do you get the courage to write or speak, sometimes in a manner that is likely to annoy certain people who hold powerful positions. What a lot of those people asking such questions fail to realize is that we are heirs of a struggle. We are, I think, the last bombs of Raila Odinga, because I remember some of the meetings we had with Raila, especially in the period after handshake. A lot of us who were the youngest people in the campaign, were very angry at the old man. But then quickly there was the 9-point agenda and the BBI process, and now, as a matter of political practicality, we had to move into the fold and see how we could contribute. And the good fortune is that my brother was present. And Mzee walked us through how he had envisioned Kenya, the things that he felt were so urgent, and the things he felt we could achieve even in that moment of temporary rapprochement between him and President Kenyatta. And so in that moment, some of us who had been very angry at Mzee because we had believed that we could push Uhuru out when we were chanting Uhuru must go. So in that moment again, we saw the peaceful Raila, a man who was so practical that while he knew that he had got a greater support than the people who were holding the instruments of power, he was willing to say that in the interest of the country, let us step back. But it was just that stepping back. It was the promise that Raila imagined that the power of the state, the power of government, could be used to uplift people who have been left in the margins of the economy. Remember, before we spoke, the bulk of the platform of our last campaign as Azimio was social protection. We were actually the campaign of the two leading campaigns that had the idea that the rural economies are suffering, and people in urban centers but informal settlements are also suffering, that we must devise an intelligent way of making sure that these people can get by. Of course, our opponents also came with what they called Hustler Fund to counter what we were suggesting. But you see, before that, I wanted to speak about during the BBI process. It was Raila's idea that young people starting businesses are given tax breaks, because he understood profoundly how a tax code can be a hindrance to investment. Without investment, no country can be able to mint new people into the middle class. So I think all this looked into collectively. You see a Raila Odinga who had dedicated his life to make sure that he is a voice of voiceless in a substantive way and not as a matter of political rhetoric. Thank you.
And Alex, he believed in right over might, is it? And more of how a social welfare state would look like. And Is that why then certainly we can explain confidently so why many people across ethnicities, across the religious divide, have subscribed to Raila's ideology that healthcare should work, education should work, infrastructure should be improved, and that the state should work for the people?
I think Ayub, just to pick up from where my colleague Kidi has left, I think he missed just a bit of precision to directly shoot that when the time for Azimio drafting manifesto came, together with him, Ascon Kamili, Advice Mondalo, there was a lady from Kanu, what's her name?
Umul Kaltuma. She is now in Garissa.
Yes, Umul Kaltuma, and a few other very sharp brains from our side. We were tasked with the momentous opportunity of drafting a manifesto, specifically targeting the young people across the country. And the Right Honorable really trusted us to do that. If it was in another regime or a different administration or a different political leader, probably they would have trusted professors, experts in the youth sector to be able to do that. But for him, he said that these are the young people and they know the aspirations that they have for this country. They know the right challenges that they have and whatever issue that they face every single day, so that they can be able to sit down and develop a blueprint on how they can be able to lift even the less served or the underserved in the community, majorly the young people, to be able to rise to the occasion. So I want to credit Raila Odinga for that, for trusting in the capacity of young people, for mentoring young people, and also for giving the young people an opportunity to be able to air out their aspirations and whatever they think is the solution to the challenges that they continue to face. Secondly, in as far as Raila's political ideology is concerned, whether you go to the coastal side of this country, whether you go to western, whether you come back to Nairobi, whether you go to central, whether you go to northeastern, you'd find a Raila supporter. You'd find someone who believes in the ideals of Raila. You'd find someone who subscribes fully to the leadership of Raila. And that's why even in some of the rare moments where our entire perspective and understanding and comprehension of what is needed to be done was an antithesis of what he believed, we better trust in him and his judgment and his direction in terms of leadership. And because he was able to cut across ethnic divisions, he was able to cut across religion, he was able to cut across classes. It was very difficult for you to label Raila apparently the way it was labeled during the election, that is a dynasty. Because Raila grew up just like any other person, not from a humble background, not privileged in any way. He did not inherit a lot of vast wealth the way other people have done. So he was able to endear himself to all cadres or all segments of our population, be it ethnicity, be it religion, be it class, be it even the kind of ideology that we believe in. And I think this was part of what influenced in him when he was developing the BBI together with His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, to be very specific on the aspect of shared prosperity. Because for him, he understood and he had comprehended, having traveled across and traversed across the country, that there are people who believe that they are less privileged, people who believe that they cannot exercise their rights, economic rights properly, who do not have the ability to access healthcare, to access education, which is the most efficient or impactful tool of transformation. And therefore, he developed this aspect, and he was quite empathic in pushing for shared prosperity, that we need to live in our generation in a time where, whether a Kenyan you're born in Mandera or whether you're born in Kisumu or Trans Nzoia, where I come from, you have an equal chance to succeed as someone who was born in Nairobi. Can there be free education? That is part of the manifesto that Azmi was coming with, that he understood that we were facing a youth bulge that was unprecedented, and he thought that the best way first to be able to harness this youth demographic is first to develop educational institutions, ensure that we have free primary and secondary education, then we subsidize higher education, the aspect of coming up with skills training in TVETs, so that we can be able to harness our demographic dividend, was basically a perspective or a vision that Raila had. And the current challenges that we continue to face today, where we have about 14% of our young people unemployed, these are issues that Raila saw when he was still back in 1990s, 1980s because of the projections that were there in our population. And therefore, he tried as much as he can to be able to come up, whether it was administrative, constitutional, or legislative changes, to be able to foresee and preempt the challenges that we are going to face later.
Yeah, and Kidi, the misunderstanding of geopolitics allowed Raila to understand further locally when to switch on and off the political socket, especially understanding that it was time to pull back from the abyss, and in many situations, one amongst that 2007-8.
Yes, I think that Raila had at all times understood the precarious position that Kenya was finding itself in. Because Kenya, the story of the Kenyan state is not different from the story of what you call the African state. They're all very fragile. They might look stable today, but with one small trigger, everything comes tumbling down. You see the story of Sudan. For a long time, we thought Sudan was secure until when Omar al-Bashir was deposed. You look at the Congo situation and how it is now very fragile today. And most of these African countries are very fragile. I believe that, for instance, had Raila heeded in 2017 to the incitement, and I call it the incitement of his advisors then, that Kenya was a cruel marriage, I am sure possibly we would be competing with Somalia right now in terms of our failed state. So that in spite of the many disappointments from the state towards the people, disappointments from the state towards Raila Odinga the person, Raila Odinga at all times had the presence of mind and the largeness of spirit to subordinate his own disappointment, his own desires, to the interest of the nation. For instance, you see, just around that time when we were coming from the 2007-2008 crisis, there was also the Cote d'Ivoire situation where Bagbo and Alassane Ouattara, where Bagbo had done to Ouattara precisely what President Kibaki had done to Raila Odinga. But then, as opposed to Alassane Ouattara was able to sustain the pressure and even got Bagbo, I think, deposed and eventually taken to ICC. I think had Raila been a vindictive person, as some people wanted to make us believe previously, as some people attempted to paint him, I think President Kibaki would not have transitioned in a dignified manner as he did. So when all is said and done, we now have a chance to paint bare the full picture of Raila Amolo Odinga for the whole world to see what a great man and a great soul we have lost.
Yeah. And the live pictures are coming to you from the Moi International Sports Center, KASARANI, where we can see the conglomerate of the National Youth Service that are attending to a situation. Also, as you can see, the members of the public have been allowed back to sit at the terraces. Also, the live pictures from the Bondo home of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, where he will be laid to rest on Sunday, and a communication that we have just gotten from my colleague and the team in Kisumu County that is led by Laura Otieno, that the people who will be coming out for the public viewing on Saturday that was scheduled at the Moi Stadium in Kisumu County has been moved to the Jomo Kenyatta Stadium in Mamboleo, and that is just the communication that we have received. In Kisumu County, the public viewing on Saturday that was scheduled at the Moi Stadium has been moved to the Jomo Kenyatta Stadium in Mamboleo. So let's cross over to the KASARANI Stadium and listen in all the Bondo home of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga.
it's criminal. So we request that all our mourners just do it in a peaceful way and observe the laws to the letter.
So we are going to open at least for the public 3 gates, entrance and exit, and the VIP area be controlled, and when as Salmon Rimba said, so we expect this to be the rain, and we called all the supporters who come to come and mourn, but not to be rowdy.
So these are the preparations that are underway in Kisumu County for the public viewing of the body of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. This was a communication that had stated that the venue has been changed from Moi Stadium and now moved to Jomo Kenyatta Stadium in Mamboleo. And you can see the final touches ongoing of the tents that will be housing the people who will be coming on Sunday to view the body of the former Prime Minister. As you can see the preparations and the final touches which are underway ahead of Saturday, when the body of the former Prime Minister will be flown from Nairobi to Kisumu County for public viewing, and then before it will be taken by road to Bondo in Siaya County, where it will spend the overnight before his final resting place on Sunday in the county of Siaya. So the live pictures also coming to you from the Moi International Sports Center in Kasarani, where we had earlier on witnessed standoff between members of the security service and members of the public, but now order seems to have been restored, as you can see them taking their seats at the terraces, awaiting for the presentation of the body which was taken off the military gun carriage for the public viewing that will be underway any moment, though behind schedule as communicated yesterday by the Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki. Yes, Kidi.
Yes. Part of the disorder you are seeing is because the supporters of Raila Odinga are still coming to terms with this very devastating news. I mean, a lot of people had hinged their hopes on the life's work of this one man. And Raila Odinga, one of the legacies he carries to his grave is his strength. Raila was a man of great personal strength. So that even now in death is when a lot of people of Kenya are realizing that he had got many health complications, from the DVT to kidney issue to hypertension and all this.
Yes, Kidi, can I just pause? You will proceed? Yeah, this is a chopper that has landed at the Bondo home of the former Prime Minister, so we see who will be coming off and who was airborne. I will be zooming in there to see who exactly was inside this chopper. It's Oburu Odinga, Raila Odinga's elder brother and Siaya County Senator, who deputizes Professor Kithure Kindiki as a member of the committee. Of course, he co-chairs alongside the deputy president, Professor Kithure Kindiki. He was airborne for some minutes and now has landed in the Bondo home of his brother and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Of course, the senator has been a constant companion of the former Prime Minister and one of the pillars upon which the Odinga's family stood. And you can see there the love that is accorded, and what's been a tradition with his brother and the father and the family at large is the fly whisk that he family holds as he is ushered to his car for the next destination, perhaps to coordinate the family ahead of the Sunday burial of his brother. He was with the president yesterday at State House when the head of state had addressed the nation from State House in Nairobi, and he will shortly be on the move, where will be now the man to coordinate the events from here and who co-chairs the committee that is tasked with the preparation for the funeral and the final rites that will be accorded the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga following the presidential proclamation yesterday by President William Ruto at State House in Nairobi. Of course, the senator previously has served as a nominated member of the bicameral house and was elected the senator representing Siaya County in the last election. And as has been the case in Nairobi, also the grief that engulfs this community also in Bondo, the home of the former Prime Minister, as his car moves at snail's pace before the next stop where he is expected to head the coordination of events. As has been the case, you can see the number of people who are escorting his vehicle in Bondo, where our team is tracking the senator and also all the other activities that will be happening in Bondo. We are also keeping an eye at the Moi International Sports Center in Kasarani. As planned earlier, the movement of the venue for the public viewing from the National Assembly to Kasarani, and we had witnessed the challenges posed by the number of people who surged the sea of humanity who came to view a man who they have considered as the buffer between them and authoritarianism and who are championed for their rights. Struggle for multipartyism, of course, and the pathway to Katiba 2010, which was born, and Raila's constant advocacy for the rule of law and good governance, which was what had underpinned his political career ever since he had ventured into the arena. The support seems to be as was with his brother. You can see the affection that has easily been worn by the Odingas politically, and here is the inside the compound where Oburu Odinga will be as his vehicle makes it here. We are giving you the blow-by-blow account of the attention that this day, tomorrow, and on Sunday, before the former Prime Minister will be laid to rest, deserve here on Citizen Television. So let's listen in to what's happening there.
pictures from the Okoda farm. What had just transpired the past few minutes that it saw a bit of commotion was the arrival of Dr. Oburu Oginga, who is the brother of Raila Odinga. This is the very first time that a family member is stepping into the Opoda farm, the home, what you may call in Swahili, Boma la Raila Odinga, and hivi kwamba he is inside there to perform certain important steps in regards to communicating the death of Raila Odinga. And of course, after this, we should be seeing a lot of developments. But I'm not alone here. I am with my colleague Jay Bonyo, who has been here for the past few hours. Maybe you can help us understand exactly what we just witnessed and the significance of Dr. Oburu Oginga to come to the home of Raila Odinga.
Thank you, Sam. I think it is important for our viewers to understand that the arrival of Dr. Oburu Oginga here is very significant because it is now officially communicated to the people of Sakwa and Kowak that their son Raila Amolo Odinga is dead. And with that, the home is now officially again opened for mourners so that they can come in and grieve and mourn the loss of their son. So it was important for Dr. Buru to come here because ideally it ought to have been Mama Ida Odinga who does the same. If the burial could have been happening for about 2 weeks or so, then Mama Ida ought to have come so that she can officially open her home to mourners. But considering the time constraints, considering the logistics that are involved, then it was important for the eldest son of Jaramogi, who is Dr. Oburu Oginga, to come here so that he can do what Mama Ida ought to have done. Open his brother's home to mourners and officially communicate to the clan that we have a funeral, we have lost a son, and these are the next logical steps that we need to take as far as his interment is concerned. And that is why you see Dr. Buru is holed up in there with a number of elders, Raila's peers, close family members who are here, so that he can communicate to them, especially now that he's also the co-chair of the National Funeral Planning Committee of Raila Amolo Odinga. So he's also going to brief them of what they have discussed at the National Funeral Planning Committee so that the home people can understand and be aware and digest what is going to happen in the next couple of days.
When you say home people, you mean watu wa nyumbani?
Yes, it is watu ya nyumbani because ideally it's the clan members of Kowak where Raila comes from.
Right, and maybe you can describe to us, because we had seen a number of wazees, elders outside the main door to the house. Perhaps you can help us understand who exactly is Dr. Oburu Oginga meeting now?
Yes, ideally he's meeting relatives, he's meeting Raila's peers. I've seen a couple of them, the likes of Olango Nyabola, Morisola and all that. The people who grew up with Raila, the people who ordinarily when he comes home, he hangs around. So they're the team that is there because at his age, you don't really expect anybody older than Raila. So those are his peers, those are close relatives, and probably you'll find a few people from the church so that they are also able to understand because the burial ceremony will be conducted by the Diocese of Bondo, the Anglican Church. So they'll be able to understand what are the plans, what is expected of us, and what needs to be done over the next couple of days.
And yesterday, as we were speaking to the residents here, they were telling us that because we saw that the house remained